DreamWorks is such an unusual film studio / entertainment company, I don't even know exactly what to call it. They are widely recognized by their logo, with the boys sitting on the moon fishing. That puts you into a nice relaxing mood before the movie starts. I'm sure you have seen it before, maybe without realizing much about the company it represents or the significance behind it. Well, in 1992, many of the best players in the NBA came together from different teams to represent the United States in the Olympics. It was famously nicknamed the Dream Team, and ever since, that phrase has taken on a broader meaning to describe any situation where the best people in an area join together, and DreamWorks is a perfect example of that. That is where the dream in the name comes from. In October of 1994, it was exciting news when the company was formed by three tremendously successful people from different parts of the entertainment industry. I'm talking about Steven Spielberg, Jeffrey Katzenberg, and David Geffen. It was officially called DreamWorks SKG, with each letter representing the last name of one of the founders. The three of them combined to invest $100 million into the business, and that was complemented by outside investors. Most notably, Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen provided $500 million in exchange for 18% ownership. The main idea behind it was to make an independent company outside of the traditional studio system, where the creative people were in charge. In modern times, practically unheard of on such a large scale like this, so as you could imagine, this was a big thing in the industry that everyone was curiously watching to see where it would go. There was reason to believe that DreamWorks may have become the next major film studio, and they actually did reach comparable figures. They even had these ambitious plans of making the first major Los Angeles studio to be constructed since the 1930s. They paid $20 million for 47 acres of land, with plans of expanding on it significantly, but there were complications and it never ended up happening. I think this is a fascinating story, so in this video, my goal is to express the significance of DreamWorks and the changes over the years by highlighting each letter of the SKG and how that person impacted the company, with the S representing Steven Spielberg, who I don't think I have to provide too much background about, considering he is quite possibly the most popular director of the past 50 years. His first hit movie was Jaws in 1975, followed by E.T. in the 1980s, Jurassic Park in the 1990s, and so many others. So it makes sense that DreamWorks quickly became a force in the industry when it came to live-action productions. Spielberg himself directed some big movies for the company, starting with Amistad in 1997, followed by Saving Private Ryan the following year. I think it is impressive that DreamWorks was responsible for American Beauty in 1999 and then Gladiator in 2000, both considered box office successes and Best Picture winners. Back-to-back Best Picture winners for a company that hadn't even existed for a decade yet is a pretty wild accomplishment. Aside from movies, DreamWorks was responsible for multiple television shows, most of which were short-lived and not incredibly successful, the most notable one being the ABC comedy starring Michael J. Fox called Spin City. In 1999, DreamWorks also invested over $7 million to create internet-exclusive content on a website called Pop.com, reportedly offering Steve Martin $100,000 to make a 2-minute film for it. That one was an ambitious investment, but it never really got off the ground and was shut down within the year. See, an ongoing issue for DreamWorks was that they experienced so many flops and failed endeavors that it was hard to be consistently profitable. I mean, it's almost unrealistic to expect everything to do well, but as a comparatively smaller company, it was harder to overcome those losses. And they did lose a lot of money in 2002 and 2003 that sparked some major changes. I will talk more about them, but they essentially left live action as the core of the business. In 2006, DreamWorks was sold to Paramount Pictures in a $1.6 billion deal. The company that had set out to operate outside of the traditional studio system was now part of one of those traditional studios. I should mention that this was an odd deal where Paramount quickly sold the 59 films DreamWorks had built up in their library to help fund the deal, but then repurchased them 4 years later. And I also want to mention that Jeffrey Katzenberg left the company at the time of the deal. So then then, only 2 years later, Spielberg and the other executives at DreamWorks reportedly had issues with the head of Paramount, so they announced that they would be leaving Paramount in another odd situation where they teamed up with another company from India to relaunch DreamWorks. Once again, it was an independent company, but David Geffen left at this time, so unlike before, Spielberg was the only original founder still attached to it. I know it is getting complicated, but you could see how DreamWorks was slowly losing that original identity, and I'm just gonna say becoming less disruptive. In 2015, Amblin Partners was created, named after Spielberg's first commercial film from 1968, and DreamWorks became part of that. Ever since, they've been doing this thing where the more mature movies have been released as DreamWorks, while the more family-friendly ones are released as Amblin. And that was the journey of DreamWorks only when it comes to the live-action stuff, which remember is only part of the business. Moving on to the K in SKG, Jeffrey Katzenberg entering into the DreamWorks endeavor was already one of the most influential names in animation. For the previous decade, he was chairman of Walt Disney Studios and considered to be one of the people most responsible for reviving Disney during that time, specifically when it came to animation, producing all of those Disney animated classics from the early 1990s. In short, it was a messy situation over there. President of Disney, Frank Wells, had died suddenly. Katzenberg wanted to take over his position, but board member Roy Disney was stopping that from happening, so Katzenberg left the company and even sued them for over $250 million he felt he was owed as part of a contract that Disney was saying he forfeited when he left the company. There was a lot going on there, but leaving Disney was that spark that helped create DreamWorks. He brought his experience in animation over to the new company, and that arguably became the most successful part of it. Ants, spelled with a Z, was DreamWorks' first animated film to be released in 1998, and right away, it was like an extension of his feud with Disney. See, in 1995, Pixar had released the first ever feature-length computer animated film called Toy Story, obviously a revolutionary film that helped change animation as we know it. The second ever feature-length computer animated film was, in fact, Ants, released by DreamWorks only a few weeks before Pixar released the third feature-length computer animated film, A Bug's Life. Clearly, the two of those have similar themes, being about insects, and even though A Bug's Life proved to be the more successful of the two, Ants still did really well. At the time, it was the most successful animated film not made by Disney. DreamWorks went on to release traditionally animated movies like The Prince of Egypt and Sinbad Legend of the Seven Seas that never seemed to do quite as well as the computer animated ones. The big moment for DreamWorks came in 2001 with the release of Shrek, who I want to point out beat Pixar's Monsters, Inc. to win the newly created Oscar for Best Animated Feature. Animation was becoming the next big thing in Hollywood, and DreamWorks was right there on top of it. In 2004, DreamWorks Animation was spun off from DreamWorks as its own publicly traded company with Katzenberg as the CEO. They did that partially because that segment of the company was so successful, and it was a way to finally repay Paul Allen and the rest of those initial investors. They strategically made that offering the same year as the release of Shark Tale and, more importantly, Shrek 2. I mean, these were impactful movies to a lot of people. I remember seeing both of those in the movie theater and just having a great experience. I know that I'm not the only one here because Shrek 2 was the highest grossing movie of 2004 and the highest grossing animated movie ever to be released at the time. However, the DVD sales were disappointingly low, causing issues with the new company, but DreamWorks Animation went on to start some more really successful franchises like Madagascar in 2005, Kung Fu Panda in 2008, and How to Train Your Dragon in 2010. That is quite a lineup, and I think helps explain why DreamWorks Animation was acquired by NBC Universal in 2016 for $3.8 billion, in a deal where Katzenberg reportedly received about $400 million. It happened again, where this part of it was now acquired by one of the traditional studios, so it no longer resembles that disruptive, independent company that it started as. Finally, the G in SKG stands for David Geffen, who before DreamWorks was already one of the biggest names in the music industry. He helped finance some major Broadway musicals like Little Shop of Horrors and Cats, and founded multiple record labels like Geffen Records in 1980, who signed some of the biggest performers of the decade. In 1990, he sold that label in a $550 million deal where he received 12% ownership of MCA, who was the owner of Universal Studios. Studios. He had also created the Geffen Film Company, whose first movie was Risky Business in 1983 that helped launch the career of Tom Cruise and I think is most known for that musical scene. There is way too much that could be said here, so you're going to have to trust me that David Geffen was easily one of the biggest names in the music industry, so when he helped start DreamWorks, that is where he utilized most of his talents. In 1996, DreamWorks Records was launched and went on to sign some major artists, starting with George Michael and quickly adding to the list with names like Nelly Furtado, Papa Roach, and Toby Keith. In 2003, DreamWorks Records was sold to Universal Music Group for about $100 million and shut down shortly after, but as I said before, David Geffen stuck with DreamWorks until 2008. One final category that I want to at least mention here is video games. While DreamWorks had all of that other stuff going on, amazingly, they were also deeply involved in video games. In 1995, DreamWorks and Microsoft each contributed $30 million to create a joint venture called DreamWorks Interactive. The idea was mainly to create games based on other media. They made a Goosebumps game that did pretty well and a Jurassic Park game that didn't do all that well, but by far, the thing that they will most be remembered for is Medal of Honor. It was a realistic World War II first-person shooter that was based on a concept created by Steven Spielberg. He had the idea while making the movie Saving Private Ryan. The game was published by Electronic Arts, who then went on to buy the entire company for an estimated $10 million, who then made many more installments in the series. Also, I have to bring attention to the fact that Call of Duty was very much influenced by Medal of Honor. It was kind of like Activision's response to it, and a lot of the people who worked on Medal of Honor went on to create Call of Duty. So I don't think it's a stretch to say that neither of those games would exist if it wasn't for DreamWorks. DreamWorks was started as an unconventional, ambitious idea, and it's hard to judge whether or not it has been a success. On one hand, financial struggles have caused it to be slowly dismembered and taken over by various large companies that generally operate it in a way that conflicts with the spirit of why it was created in the first place. But on the other hand, DreamWorks is responsible for such a wide range of successful media properties. I would bet that almost everybody watching this has had a great experience with something created by DreamWorks. For me personally, even seeing that guy fishing on the moon somehow puts me in a good mood. In 2000, David Geffen said, "This is not the best arena for us to make money, but it is the best arena for us to do what we want to do with the least amount of interference, and what we believe is, over time, we will build a very, very attractive, substantial library." I felt that was an applicable statement, so tell me what you think about whether or not DreamWorks has been an overall success. And also, let me know in the comments, what do you think about this company? Do you respect the disruptive nature of it and the stuff that was created by it, or do you think that there is nothing that stands out as being all that unique or extraordinary? Also, what is your favorite creation from DreamWorks? I realize I barely scratched the surface when it comes to everything that they have made over the years, but I did my best to mention what I believe to be the more significant ones that best tell the story of the company. So I recommend you take a deeper look into everything else that they have done. You will be busy for a while, and any other thoughts you have about DreamWorks, leave them in the comments. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Thank you for watching.